Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Stand Taller TV. And today's episode we have Dr. Kirk Keener with us. Everybody,
how you doing, everyone?
All right, excellent. Let me give you a little bit of background on Dr. Keener. He's married and a father of 5 children. That's quite a lot of kids there. I have 3 myself, and I know how busy I am. So
the house is full.
Yeah, never a dull moment. Huh? And also, he graduated from the University of Alabama, and he started in healthcare as a nurse back in 1992. He then became certified neuromuscular therapist, and following that, he started working with endurance-based athletes, and that's both triathlons and marathons, with diet and nutrition. He was then certified to teach the Zone Diet by Dr. Barry Sears in 1998, and started doing triathlons yourself. Did you ever do, what length triathlons?
I did all lengths. I did everything from sprints to the big boys like you see in Hawaii.
Did the Ironman, huh?
I didn't do the actual Ironman, but the same length.
Okay, same length. I thought they called them all Ironman marathons, or triathlons. It's just a full.
Yeah, that's just a full triathlon, because you've got the Great Floridian that's there in Florida. That is an Ironman pre-qualifier.
Okay, so the Ironman is just the one in Hawaii then. That's
in Hawaii.
Okay, all right, I got it. All right. So after, I guess, doing those, he then taught the Zone Diet at the YMCA for 5 years, and ranked top 100 of the Southeast in triathlons. In 2000, graduated from Life University with a Doctor of Chiropractic, and he practiced in Atlanta, Georgia for 4 years, and then Orlando, Florida for 8 years. And he's currently, and has been with Ideal Protein for the last 3 years, as a regional development consultant and a physician consultant, which is actually why we're here. This program is on weight loss, so we're going to talk about the Ideal Protein diet as well as weight loss in general. And as somebody that's been there and done it, Dr. Keener actually lost 126 pounds in 6 months, and he's kept the weight off now for 3.5 years. And he's worked with over 172 patients who have each lost over 100 pounds in less than a year. And as part of that, he's also owned and operated 4 highly successful weight loss centers in Florida and Alabama. So with that glowing introduction, I guess, is there anything else you want to add, or anything else pertinent to
no,
this?
Chris, just so everyone's clear on what you just said, the 172 patients, that is, I've got 172 people who have lost over 100 pounds in less than a year, just like myself. But in the last 3.5 years, we've saw well over 1,000 patients, and had just an incredible success rate.
Right, so the 172 is just that many that have lost over, basically century losers, huh?
Absolutely. And with the Ideal Protein weight loss protocol, which we'll be talking about in just a few minutes, as far as I know, that's more centurions than anyone else in the United States.
Okay, excellent. So a lot of expertise in that area.
Absolutely.
So how did you, obviously, I guess with the athletics and everything, and I guess I'm kind of wondering maybe how you got overweight in the first place if you're doing triathlons, but I imagine with 5 kids you sort of slowed down a little bit maybe.
Well, it is. It's an interesting story, Chris. To be honest with you, and I tell patients all the time, every pound has a story, whether it's coming on or going off. And I basically had fought weight problems since I was about 13 years old. And kind of, if we back up and say every pound has a story, and then I say I fought weight problems since I was 13, then I've had patients to look at me and say, well, what was your story? Why did you start battling weight problems? And my story is not quite that much different than most people. Some people, once they get into their adult life, will either go through a divorce or something like that, maybe lose a job. That's been real common here in the last several years. I actually lost a sibling, an older sister. And so after losing, that relationship of a sibling, I turned to food as my comfort and my companion instead of having that sibling to talk to. So that happened when I was 12 years old, and within a year, I grew up actually a very small to average sized child. But when that event took place, it was not long after that to where the weight was obvious. And I graduated high school, thank goodness, because of athletics at a reasonable size and weight, about 6'1", 198, right at 200 pounds. A little bit of muscle and stuff like that. But boy, when you go off to college and you start hitting the books and get busy and stuff like that, and doing a lot of things that college folks do that may not be very advantageous to watching your weight. Sure enough,
Drinking your calories, I imagine you're referring to.
Consuming those liquid calories, yeah. You know, my weight just blossomed from there, and so I was in the military for 10 years in the reserves, the National Guard. But even there, you know, the PT tests were never easy. I struggled, you know, to run the 2 miles and to do everything. I always passed them, but I didn't pass them with, you know, with flying colors and with ease and that kind of stuff. So it was a long kind of, you know, history or story there of battling weight. And I actually got into powerlifting. I met up with some guys and got interested in lifting weights, and so I bulked up to about 275 pounds and was lifting just ridiculous amounts of weight. Had a back injury as a result of that, and after that back injury, all along that time I was working with those endurance-based athletes and watching them and coaching them on how to optimize their nutrition for endurance-based activities such as triathlons and things like that. So once I had my injury, I knew I couldn't go back to lifting the amount of weight and doing the things I was doing before. Right. So I thought, well, heck, you know, why don't I give that a try? You know, it's not, it is physically demanding on your body, but it wasn't physically demanding on my spine per se because of all the weight being on top of it. And so I got into triathlons, and actually I did the zone diet to help lose some weight so I could be physically active enough to do the triathlons. And I lost about 65 pounds, you know, doing the zone diet plus exercising 3 and 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, mostly being, you know, the cardio type stuff, the running, biking, and swimming. And so I did that, but my competition weight in the triathlons, I was in what they call the Clydesdale division, which is essentially everyone over 200 pounds. And I competed at like 215, 216.
How tall are you, just to put that in perspective?
Right now I'm 6'3".
Okay, 6'3". Okay, so that's still a pretty good frame for that. I mean, that's
it is. Yeah, I wasn't carrying a bunch of, you know, you didn't look at me and go, oh gosh, you know, that guy's just real chunky out here trying to do triathlons. No, I was slim. But I was just still over 200 pounds. But I thought, based upon the amount of activity I did and the diet I was doing, that's as low as I could get. And to be honest with you, it was with that program. Right. And so I did those triathlons, did them rigorously, started having joint pain, just overuse syndromes and stuff like that, and ended up having to have surgery on one of my knees. And next thing you know, well, now all that endurance, repetitive use, you know, type stuff is gone out the window. And boy, that's when I really started battling the weight issues, was after 2000, year 2000. And from there, sure enough, even though I wasn't doing all that strenuous exercise, I was still following that other diet protocol, but the weight just kept coming back and kept coming back. Not you know, in drastic amounts, but it was, you know, 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds every single month. Right. And it didn't matter, seemingly it didn't matter what I did, it just kept coming back until I was back up around that 255, 260 mark. And I stayed right there for a number of years. My wife got pregnant with expecting our 5th child. And boy, when that happened, I joined in with her, at least in everything she was doing. And
sitting on the couch eating bonbons, huh?
Exactly.
Just kidding. Sorry, don't tell her that.
Yeah.
Don't show her
if
this.
If there was any food that she didn't finish, I finished. If there was any food that any of the 4 kids didn't finish already that we had, I finished. You know, so next thing you knew, I watched my weight increase all the way up to 317 pounds up to the day that we had our 5th child. And that's kind of my story, but here's sort of the apex. When we had that 5th child, we were looking at some photos of the birth and everything. We did a home delivery. I actually delivered the child. It was just my wife and I. Just an incredibly beautiful situation and scenario there. And we were looking at some of the photos of the birth afterwards with our other children. And one of my other children, probably my most mannered child, which happens to be one of my boys, was actually looking at one of the photos, and he just came right out and said, you know, geez, Daddy, you're fat. And that right there was really the turning point. I mean, he
Yeah.
didn't say anything that I didn't already know.
Right.
I was going to work wearing triple X scrub shirts and, you know, just hiding and covering up my weight and my body the same way a lot of people do. And, but once I was confronted with that, you know, from one of my own children, and very innocently, you know, quoted but very factually, I knew it was time to do something. And so I had met up with someone who represented Ideal Protein in the manner in which I do now, who was a physician consultant, about a month prior to that. And we had talked, and he had said some things that, from a physician standpoint of view, I agreed with, but then there were some things that I didn't agree with. And basically, just to end our meeting and conversation that day, that I met him down in Naples, Florida, you know, I told him, I said, look, my wife is expecting our 5th child. It's due any day. Give us time to have that 5th child, and then in about a month, give me a call, and we can talk further. And so, sure enough, as fate would have it, 2 days after the birth of that child, and 1 day after, you know, being reminded of how fat I was by one of my own, that gentleman called me. And so we got everything started almost immediately. I got on the program basically, yes, I wanted to help myself, I wanted to lose weight, but in my mind, what I had to go back to doing was sort of following somewhat of that zone protocol eating guide, and I knew I had to get back to exercising. I knew, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I set my Snickers and my, you know, my shorts and everything beside the bed, set the alarm for 5 or 5:30 a.m., and it would go off, and then I would just slap it 4 or 5 times, hitting the snooze button, and crawl out of bed at about 7 a.m. and be at the office by 9. So,
you know, if I can, just on that point, because it's
yep.
a pretty important point, and I think it, both exercise and weight loss, which go a little hand in hand, obviously, the accountability factor.
Right.
You know, I know from talking to a lot of people, and as a matter of fact, Dr. Peacock and I were talking about New Year's resolutions and why so many of them fail. And, you know, with dieting, with exercise, I mean, I know I'm the same way. And I used to run early in the morning, but I had somebody in my old neighborhood that we'd agree to meet out front at 6 a.m. And it's a lot harder to hit that snooze button and roll over and go back to bed when you know somebody's out there waiting on you,
Exactly.
rather than just you doing it yourself. And I want to bring that up because I know a lot of people struggle with these same issues. You know, I can't motivate myself, or, you know, I can't seem to lose the weight. And, you know, if I don't tell anybody, then I tend to cheat on myself, and then I hate myself for it. And I really think it's a critical, and you can confirm or deny, I guess, but, you know, I think the factor of having accountability, and obviously, you know, with the weight loss program, the Ideal Protein, it's a weekly weigh-in, you know, and you're doing your body fat percentage, but even just having somebody to talk to each week, and you know, and I tell most of the patients we work with that, you know, if they need to call me, I mean, because I'm doing it myself, and I was at a similar point, and my kids started calling me Chubby Daddy. You know, I started thinking, okay, all right, enough of that, you know, and like you said, out of the mouths of babes, you know.
That's right.
So yeah, and I just know, you know, if it wasn't for my wife sometimes looking over my shoulder, you know, are you really going to eat that? You know,
Right.
I don't see that on the sheet here, you know.
Yeah, that external accountability is huge. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, seriously, we are our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
Okay, we will lie to ourselves. We will cheat. We will steal from ourselves. We will do all of those things to ourselves far more quickly than we will to someone else.
Right.
And the thing about it is, it's because we let ourselves get away with doing those kind of things. And so that external accountability is absolutely key. That's one of the hallmarks of Ideal Protein. And I know some other plans have, you know, weekly coaches, possibly Jeannie Craig and Weight Watchers if you're willing to pay and go online or go check into a meeting and all that kind of stuff. But our coaches it's one-on-one sessions. They're corporately certified coaches, and they're there to instruct you and show you, basically keep you on track. You know, not really to, you know, to spank you, but also, you know, not to just overly drench you, you know, with accolades, and, you know, it's to the point where you just, you know, you get sick of hearing how good you're doing, or, you know, how well you're doing. But they are certainly there to encourage and instruct and counsel, and all those things are vitally important. And so, Yeah, that external accountability. When I first started training for triathlons, I did the exact same thing. A buddy of mine that lived down the street, he and I would meet outside at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and we did that for about 5 months. And then when it hit about April or so, and it came time to start training for swimming, and we had to go jump in that swimming pool. The Olympic-sized swimming pool at 4:30 in the morning that was not indoors or heated. I quickly lost him, but hey, man, I'd already made such good strides, and I was dead set on doing it to where I kept doing it myself. But when I first started this diet, that was one of the things that I started this diet because, or that I knew that I was going to give this diet at least a try. And in my head, like I said a minute ago, I thought that I had to eat a balanced diet, do at least moderate amounts of exercise, if not a lot of exercise. And the gentleman that I had met with and that had consulted me the month prior to starting this program that I mentioned I had met in Naples, Florida, one of the things he kept saying to me was this exact phrase: "Doc, you're going to love this program because you don't have to exercise at all." And so in my mind, that didn't sit well with me because I didn't think it was physiologically possible. And so in my mind, I said, you know what, I'm going to try this diet for 30 days, and I'm going to prove to this gentleman that you cannot lose the kind of weight that they claim you can lose on this program without exercising. Well, Chris, to be honest with you, I didn't do one single thing. And I lost 30 pounds the first 30 days. I mean, I lost a pound a day. Yeah. And after that, I was so impressed because I just knew in my mind I was doing everything exactly like they told me, exactly how it was written. I didn't miss anything. I didn't feel like I was cheated or being neglected of anything. But I did it to prove a point that you couldn't lose weight without exercising, when in all actuality, a physiologically based program such as Ideal Protein, you absolutely can lose significant amount of weight without exercising at all, because it's all physiologically based and not metabolically based. Exercise is designed to raise or increase your metabolism or your metabolic rate, which is the rate in which your body burns calories, whether you're exercising or not exercising. And our program, doesn't. That's not one of the hallmarks of our program. Our program is to put the body in a physiological state, a very safe and effective state or condition that induces fat loss or fat burning, and that process is called ketosis. Ketosis is something I've been asked by a lot of other physicians that I consult for. Doc, do you have any studies about your program? And I explained to them, look, the gist or the basis of our program is ketosis, and there's been a gazillion studies written about getting the body into ketosis. And so that's like saying, can I produce a study that says water hydrates the body? Yeah. Well, it's common sense. I mean, everybody knows that water hydrates the body, and so in the medical realm, everybody knows in the medical realm that ketosis induces fat loss or burns fat. And so no, there's not any inconclusive, separated studies on Ideal Protein, but the engine that fuels our program, or that is responsible for the success of our program, there's a ton of studies on, and that is ketosis. So
yeah, you don't commission studies to say that 2 + 2 = 4, do you? So
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Go
ahead.
So I was just going to say one other point too, which you just mentioned, which was the 30 pounds the first month. Because I know on it myself, I lost 7 pounds the first week. Right. And while I sort of dabbled in Atkins, and I do high protein. I love my eating meats and things, but to see that kind of result pretty quickly was instrumental, because to me too, the success fed on itself. Absolutely. And I know there's a lot of other plans that maybe try to do it a little slower, and probably there are health issues, I guess, if you do it too fast. But I really just thought it was so critical seeing that real quick win that you want to keep building on it. Right. And to me, it's thrilling almost. And, where I really didn't care in the past. And I kind of just, I'm 6 feet, and I think I got up to 210. And, it wasn't obese, but it was certainly chubby, and I probably wasn't too attractive to my wife at some point. Actually, she let me know, so that's kind of what fueled this as well. She's English and she doesn't mince words, so.
But yes, absolutely. You're right there, Chris, and that's the thing about it is one thing you mentioned just then was about losing weight possibly too fast, and here's what the studies, here's what physiology actually tells us. There's only two ways or two reasons that someone could be losing weight too quickly. And one of those things is if you're losing just as much muscle mass as you are fat. So if you're losing 4 or 5 pounds a week and 2.5 to 3 pounds of it is muscle and the other 2.5 3 pounds is fat, that's not good for the body. That will put you in dire situations.
That's your body eating itself, basically.
Exactly. So if you're losing just as much muscle as you are fat with the proper vitamins and minerals, that's one of the key components. So if you're losing weight very quickly, what tends to happen, Chris, is as you're breaking down fat, fat has a lot of water stored in it. So that first week you mentioned you lost 7 pounds. Was all of that water? Well, no, of course not. Probably 3, maybe 3.5 to 4 pounds of it could have been, but I guarantee you had a legitimate 2.5, 3 pound, week of fat loss because there's a lot of water in that fat. I mean, a lot of water in that fat. So when you're losing weight that quickly, when you're losing 2.5, 3, 4, 5 pounds a week, if you're not careful, and like I said, keeping your electrolytes balanced through vitamin and mineral supplementation like calcium, magnesium, potassium, those kind of things. I'm not talking about any crazy fat burner pills and appetite suppressants and all that kind of stuff, but with things that your body actually needs to function properly from a physiological standpoint of view, particularly cardiac. I mean, your heart has to have the right sodium and potassium levels, or you'll go into atrial fibrillation and the kind of stuff that they're shocking you for to restart it in the hospital. So
right. That's why you don't want to starve yourself to
exactly
lose weight.
Those things are important. Yeah. So losing as much muscle as you are fat, and not supporting the body properly with the right vitamins and minerals, those are the two ways that you can get into jeopardy. And the great thing about Ideal Protein is we totally make sure that neither one of those things happen, but that you do enjoy significant weight loss.
Right. And I do know, obviously, I was military as well, and special ops. I mean, we were trained to stay hydrated. So I mean, I'm probably a pretty good 2 gallons of water a day drinker.
I was the same way with the triathlons. Yeah. I could easily consume 2 gallons a day. Now, even in maintenance, which I am now and have been for 3 years, I'm still the same way. I can easily drink 1 gallon a day, no problem whatsoever. And that's another big question. It leads into another big question. Is everyone's always asking, how much water should I drink? On our program, we just have a 64-ounce minimum. That is the same 8-ounce glasses we've been trying to get everyone to drink for 40 years. So it's nothing special. It's nothing new. It's nothing outrageous. That's the minimum. It's a half a gallon, 64 ounces a day. But I tell all my patients, the more you drink, up to a point, of course, the more you drink, the more you flush. And so I tell all my patients, whether they start out weighing 140 and it's the female that just wants to drop 15 or 20 pounds and be back down around 120, 125, or if it's someone that weighs 300 pounds or even more like I did, if you can get your body to where you're around that 1 gallon a day mark, there's something magical there. Yeah. And so I've seen that work the best.
Yeah, and I think I was reading something else too, and like I said, I mentioned that don't drink your calories, and it was just a brilliant point. I just thought, because again, you can drink all the water, all the water in the world. It's not going to make. Yeah, your body stores water anyway. Obviously, we are. I don't know what it is, 85 to 95% water, whatever the number is. But you're just going to flush it back out again. So it's not going to. Drinking more water is not going to keep the weight on, or obviously it does add some water weight, but it's it'll stay constant pretty much. So.
Exactly.
But not drinking things like sodas and sweet tea, which is down here in the South, it's sacrilege to say don't drink your sweet tea. Yeah. So and that's one of the things. Now again, I do if I'm going to drink my calories, I'm going to save it for a cold beer every now and then. Is where I go off a little bit and have my little cheat time. But we won't mention that to anybody.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to get you in shape when I get down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some other big barriers? We've got New Year's just passed. We're halfway through January, which is about the time I think 80% of people have already failed on their New Year's resolutions. One of which last week's episode was sort of New Year's resolutions. Obviously weight loss, quit smoking, be more active are sort of three of the big top 10. Obviously most people have already abandoned them, if not, not held up to it. We know accountability is a major factor. What are some other barriers and just things in general with weight loss that you've seen really people struggle with, or why? I mean, I know, we talked about this, I guess, at the beginning. If I had the discipline to do this myself, I would have the discipline not to be overweight in the first place. So, right. I think Einstein said, you can't, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Absolutely.
He also said you can't solve problems on the same level they're created at. So with that said, I think, you've got to step above what you've been doing or sort of definitely change things. But what are some other barriers to weight loss that you really see? I mean, habits and discipline.
One of them I kind of touched on a minute ago, Chris, is, I thought in my mind I needed to eat a more balanced diet, exercise. We have to get people over all of the mistakes, or I guess you'd say the non-truths that the fitness industry and the infomercial people and all of that have done such a remarkable job of convincing people of over the last 25 to 30 years. And, like I just said, you don't have to exercise to lose significant amount of weight. It's all in the diet. I was watching a show not too long ago. A lady was interviewing Tony Horton, who created P90X, and she was asking him some of the differences in, selling weight loss programs or fitness programs like that now versus 20 years ago when Tony Little was doing all the gazelle walkers and all that kind of stuff. And Tony Horton said that now the Federal Trade Commission has them nowadays. Anytime you buy any kind of a piece of equipment or anything like that from an infomercial, one of the things they have to include with whatever you're purchasing is some kind of food or dietary guide. And that's because that's one of the big really lawsuits that was brought about years and years ago. Is there's no way you can buy a little hard piece of plastic, sit in it, and do crunches all day, regardless if you do 10,000, and look like some of the models they had on TV demonstrating those things, if your diet is not right or is not improved or better from the average person. And so, and Tony Horton admitted, he was talking about, the difference in the FTC and what they were doing now, but he looked at this lady and he told her, he said 85, or she said, well, why did the Federal Trade Commission do that? And he said 85% of all body sculpting, body changing, weight loss, whatever you want to call it, is dietary. And I sit there and thought, wow, this guy's making millions selling an exercise program where he just said that 85% was dietary. And so, and that's, so I tell all my patients quite often, you can never out-exercise a bad diet. And so, so getting rid of some of those non-truths or exposing, bringing the truth to light finally for once, helps a lot of people. But there's a lot of other things, and here's probably something that is the most critical, Chris. And Dr. Tran just came out with a new book. It's a very easy read. It's a very small book. Within the last year, he came out with a new book, and he touches on it a lot in his book. And so this last year, I've been doing the same thing with a lot of patients that I've worked with that I didn't do the first 2 years. But people have to understand that, number one, it is not humanly natural to lose weight. Okay, let's take this example. Let's say we have a 140-pound female, and let's say over the course of about 3 years or so, she puts on 60 pounds. There may have been a childbirth or two in that span. There could have been a botched relationship or two, and she starts comfort eating and emotional eating and that kind of stuff. But if a female put on about 60 pounds over 3 years and now she's 200 pounds, not a lot of people is going to think a whole lot about that. They may think, oh, she's really living it up, or whatever they may think or say, but they're just not thinking anything really negative about that, at least in terms of health. Now, let's take that same 140-pound female and over the course of 3 years, knock 60 pounds off of her. Now she's down to 80 pounds, and what's everybody thinking? Everybody and their brother is checking or screening or testing for cancer or pathologies and all that kind of stuff. So here's my point.
All the other things, huh?
Exactly right. It's not humanly natural to lose weight. So with that being said, we all do have a range of weight, moderate weight range that we should fall in, and we shouldn't be more than 30 pounds outside of that range, because when we get within 30 pounds outside of that range, we're considered obese, and then clinically obese, and then morbidly obese, and then super morbidly obese. And we've got a lot of those folks, unfortunately, these days in the United States. But so just understand.
Sorry, on that point too, I've got a slide that I may insert in this video, and it was
okay.
I think it was maybe either a presentation from you, or I'm not sure if you provided it for Dr. Peacock, but it showed the percent of people that were outside their normal range in the U.S. And I believe it just went back to the 90s, maybe the 80s, 90s, but I think the whole U.S. was kind of maybe 10 to 15%. And then I think now, actually, the majority of it was red now, which was over 33% of the population in those areas. It was actually staggering. I mean, that slide in itself was mind-boggling. Just the speed at which, as a nation, we've had obesity and weight issues affect us as quickly as it has.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, Chris, right there is this. There's got to be a reason for this quickness. And I mean, I couldn't have paid you to say that, and I haven't paid you to say it, but you just hit on something very key there. Is why or how as a society are we not just doubling but tripling or quadrupling the effects of this weight gain? I mean, we should be seeing what we're seeing spread out over a 30, maybe 40-year period.
Do you know, I just, sorry, I hate to keep, I want to just throw in some things, but I just was listening to something else by, he's an internet marketer named Eben Pagan, and he said, and he's got a whole Secrets to Success program that I was listening to. One of it was diet and nutrition. He mentioned the fact that, listen, our ancestors, ate corn on the cob. They didn't have the technology to strip all the sugar out of corn and call it high fructose corn syrup and throw it in everything.
Right.
So, that's only come about probably, 20 years? I mean, the last 20 to 30 years, maybe not even that long ago. So
since the early 60s, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is probably one thing, which is we're stripping all the, and he even said it's created a culture where we crave sweet, salty, fatty foods. Absolutely. Because it's thrown into everything we eat now, So
absolutely, technology has not helped us in this arena, and that's another thing I tell my patients a lot of times. As I look at them and say, look, if your grandmother or your grandparents wouldn't recognize it, then don't eat it. They wouldn't recognize Cheez-Its and some of these other snack foods and Skittles and all this other kind of stuff, because they didn't have them when they were young, and so absolutely, technology in that sense has not helped us whatsoever. It's helped the grocery industry and the USDA and stuff like that, but not us as consumers. So, but once people understand that it's not humanly natural to lose weight, and that once you do lose the weight, that's when the real key, or that's when everything really kicks in, is the maintenance. That's another thing that Ideal Protein prides itself on as a hallmark about our program, is the fact that we go above and beyond and take that extra step to work with clients to make sure, to the best of our ability and to the best of their efforts, that they keep the weight off. And the thing about it is, of all the other programs that I've looked at and gotten to analyze and break down, Ideal Protein really, I mean, I can honestly say they really have it here. They do the things that are necessary. They give you the keys that are necessary to open that lock, so that you're not bound with instant weight gain, like most people have been all their life that's been on any other kind of diet. And here's another thing that people need to understand is diets work. And I hear all the time, especially on TV and whether it's CNN or Fox or reading it on Yahoo or whatever, diets don't work, never go on a diet. The first three letters of the word is a quote unquote, no pun intended, no is a dead giveaway. I mean, I've heard all the little cliches and funny little statements, but let me express something to you. A lot of times in my meetings, I'll ask by show of hands, if you've ever lost 30 pounds and gained it all back, raise your hand. And you almost overwhelmingly, everyone in the audience does that. And I keep going up. I say 50 pounds, 70 pounds, 100 pounds. You would be absolutely shocked or amazed at the amount of people who have lost 60 to 100 pounds and gained every bit of it back, usually within a year. And the thing about it is, those individuals are the ones that's being told that diets don't work. Right. Hello, I beg to differ. Any person that can lose 60 to 100 pounds, now I'm not sure what they were doing, but whatever they were doing worked. And the problem is, once that happened, once that event took place, the individual did not keep working.
Right. And
but
I'll tell you,
diet worked.
Yeah, and that's one of the critical, the biggest shift for me on Ideal Protein has been the psychological, I guess, shift in the way I think about eating. And
hey, it took me a while, Chris. I said, I was used to the zone diet, which was basically eat anything you want, just in moderation, and you had to be a mathematician just about to do it. And I struggled through college mathematics, so that was a strike against me right off the bat. But absolutely, and that's what I go back to mention just a minute ago about a balanced diet. And I've got a pen right here. If I take this pen and I put it on my finger, and I'm able to get it to balance, just like that right there, that pen is not moving up or down. It's balanced, okay? So if you're on a balanced diet, do you think you're going to be gaining weight or losing weight? Neither.
Neither. Yeah.
A balanced diet is designed
keep you at homeostasis. Right?
Yes, it's purpose to help you maintain. So once you lose a lot of weight, absolutely a balanced diet is one of the key factors to help keeping the weight off. But to get the weight off, Chris, we've got to unbalance those scales. But the good thing about Ideal Protein is there's a beginning and an end. Everything we do, we only do for a short period of time to get the maximum results in the shortest period of time, and to keep everything safe and effective.
All right. Well, and we need to wrap up. And I will tell you, thank you for being on the show. And now, obviously, there is a reason that Ideal Protein is called the last diet you will ever need. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like to find out more about this, to all our listeners too, Dr. Keener is actually going to be hosting a weight loss clinic or workshop in Auburn, Alabama, and that's going to be January 23rd at 6 p.m., and it's going to be at the Auburn Chamber of Commerce in their meeting room. And again, he's going to go into a lot more detail than we've had time for on the show, and really talk to everybody. We're actually going to have we've got some software that'll give you a digital before and after shot of what you'll look like, I guess, at your ideal weight, which is a great motivator for most people.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fantastic tool, and just being able to see yourself and having that goal. Because again, one of the things the psychological shift to me has been, we tend to eat for the short term. We eat for the taste. We eat for that instant sort of, like you said, fulfilling something, a desire, a craving. And we're really, and I'll say as a culture, we're very short-term oriented. I mean, if you look at our politicians, it's not long-term thinking, unfortunately. And even our eating is the same thing. We don't think about the 2-3 hours after we eat. What does this do to my energy levels? And then long-term, 10 years from now, what is this going to, and like you said, every pound has a story. So 10 years from now, what is this pound going to do for me, or where am I going to be? Right. So again, the immediate short-term, getting over that short-term habit and thinking long term. And I think that digital photo is a great step. And I sort of put mine everywhere so I could keep that vision of me there, so that I had that goal in mind. And between that and the accountability and just the psychology of Ideal Protein and everything else. So again, for more info on this, did you?
I did the same thing. I had a picture of back in the triathlon days doing one of my events, and I put that up on my mirror in the bathroom and saw it every day, every morning. That's a great visual tool. Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, again thank you so much for the show and for being here with us. And again, we're gonna do this again in a lot more detail on January 23rd at 6 p.m. At the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. So this is Dr. Keener. Thank you again for being the guest, and
glad to be here.
Yep. Thanks for having us on Stand Taller TV.
Thank you.